So in this video, we're going to talk about a two-dimensional array. And to imagine a two-dimensional array, you can almost imagine like an Excel spreadsheet with data in rows and columns. And that's how you can visualize a two-dimensional array. Now, I will say that you can have multi-dimensional arrays to the tune of 3 and 4 dimensions or more. It's not as common as a two-dimensional, but certainly, multi-dimensional arrays are used out there. We're not going to go into those in this class, but it's basically the same kind of concept that we're going to talk about here. So this is my example. I'm going to pretend we have been asked to track the number of books read for a summer reading program, between the area libraries. So, for example, here we have Palos Hills Library participating, and in the month of June, their students or their patrons read 60 books, and in July, 75, in August, 68, and so on. And so we have each city is in its own row, and then the books that were read by the kids in that city are stored in the columns in the various months, June, July, and August for the summer, spanning the whole summer. This part here in green is what is going to go into our two-dimensional array. The array it's got to be all the same data type, so I can't throw the city names and the month names into my two-dimensional array. It's just going to be the raw book data, the number of books read. Now, one thing I did include here is this is not going to go into the array, but I want you to visualize that this array is in rows and columns, and every cell, every element in the array is going to have an index, which is going to be the intersection of that row and column. And as you know, in C++, arrays are zero-based. The subscripts are zero-based, all right? So this, for example, Palos Hills in the month of June would have a 0, 0 location, okay, because that's where row 0 and column 0 intersect. If I just pick one of these random locations like this one, Orland Park in the month of August, that would be an address of 2, or a location, I should say, of 2, and what did I say, August, 2, comma 2, all right, row 2, comma 2, or column 2. All right, so anyway, let's take a look at the code here. I've started with a couple of const integers for the number of cities, which would be 4 cities you saw, and the number of months, 3 months to represent the summer. And then here is the declaration of my two-dimensional array. I've called it books read, and I am initializing it to the number of cities and the number of months. So this is going to result in an array that has 4 rows and 3 columns in memory. So now I'm just going to populate my array, and we can do the shortcut way. You can populate them individually, and I'll get to that in just a moment, but it's easier to just populate, if I'm going to hand code these values by hand, just populate it like this all in one shot. Here is the data for the Palos Hills students, and then Oak Lawn, and so on. So notice that this is a comma delimited list of little curly brace sandwiches with themselves having a comma delimited list of the number of books for each month. So it is a syntax issue that you have to be mindful of. So the array will be populated, and now after this executes, we really have this green part in memory, and now I'm ready to look at the data or do something with the data. Now let's say that Palos Hills called us and said, hey, wait a minute, we didn't read 75 books in the month of July. We read 79 books in the month of July. Will you please change that for us? And so we can do that. All I have to do is reference the row and the column. Oh, and this, hang on here. I'm going to pause this. Okay, I want you to take a good look at this can of pop here. And don't ever forget it when you're thinking about multi-dimensional arrays or two-dimensional arrays. RC, Royal Crown Cola. RC. There's a reason I'm showing you this picture. I want that burned in your memory, because whenever you're referencing a cell of an element in the two-dimensional array, it's always row first, column second, okay? Row first, column second. Obviously, RC, row, column. So now that you're never going to forget that, we have, I'm referencing row 0 for Palos Hills. Column 1 would be the month of July. And so that 75 there is going to be overwritten with a 79. Okay, and then I get a phone call from Blue Island saying, hey, wait a minute, for the month of August, we did not read 81 books. We read 84 books. So would you please update that? Not a problem. The row is 3. Remember, this is a zero-based numbering system. So the fourth row has a subscript of 3. Row first, column second, RC Cola, and the column, the month of August, would have a subscript of 2 because it's the third column in that row. Okay. All right. So we will go ahead and display the results. Now, to display results from a two-dimensional array, you will use a nested loop. And because, you know, if you think about this, I basically want my results to kind of look like this Excel spreadsheet. We're going to print it to look like this green area here. And what would I have to do? I would have to reach into the Palos Hills row, print the 3 months. Okay, so that's like kind of one loop. It's one of the loops. So the inner loop is going to process the columns, print the columns. And then I'm going to move on to the next row and print those 3 columns. And then I'm going to move on to the next row and print those 3 columns. So you really have to use a nested loop to make this happen. So basically the outer loop drives the rows, okay? So each iteration of this outer loop is going to equate to one city, one row, Palos Hills first, Oak Lawn second, and so on. So this loop is going to go 4 times because there are 4 cities. I've set it up. I like it to use, and you'll see this in your book too, using a loop counter to reflect that this is the row loop and then this is the column loop. So in any case, this one's going 4 times each, once each for the numbers for each city. And then the inner loop will process the columns within each row. And so this one is going to go 3 times because there are 3 months for the summer. And then, you know, once I make it into here, it's really just a matter of printing what is in that location. Again, row first, column second, like the RC Cola that I showed you. One more quick thing is that after each row, I do want to advance to the next line, so that's not all, you know, printed on one single line in the output screen. So let me go ahead and run that, and there is my data. It looks like that green part of the Excel spreadsheet. Now, one thing I will say is I don't have like the city names here or the months. That would be those would have to be separate arrays because you're only allowed one data type for the array. So I could do like a couple of parallel arrays with this and process those and have some column headers and row headers too. But for the most part, there's your raw data printed with a nested loop from a two-dimensional array.